technology, the world's most ancient tradition of secret knowledge. From the very first days of creation, it was passed directly from the Creator to Adam, Abraham, Sarah, Rachel, Moses, and the other biblical patriarchs and matriarchs. Kabbalah predates any religion or secular organization. It is the heritage and birthright of all humanity. Literally translated, the Aramaic word Kabbalah means to receive. Kabbalah is the study of what receiving really means on both the spiritual and practical levels of existence. Kabbalah reveals how things happen and, more importantly, why things happen in all areas of our lives, even in the dimensions beyond our physical existence. Although Kabbalists speak of the upper worlds, Kabbalah does not envision heaven as somewhere up in the sky. Paradise is defined by heightened spiritual power and awareness, not by altitude. The light of the Creator is everywhere, in ourselves and in other human beings, in trees and in animals, even in inanimate objects. Our purpose in life, therefore, is not to call down the light from heaven above, but to kindle the sparks of light that are already here. Kabbalah requires no religious training or indoctrination to make that happen. Connecting with the light is something we can do right now. Literally, everything we do is a chance to achieve that purpose. Hearing these words at this moment is an especially important opportunity. If this book is your first introduction to Kabbalah, you are about to gain some powerful tools for improving your life and the lives of everyone you meet. If you are already familiar with the wisdom of Kabbalah, the chapters that follow will provide both practical knowledge and spiritual insights to deepen your understanding. No matter who you are or why you have chosen to listen to this book, the ancient wisdom of Kabbalah is a gift from the Creator to you and all humanity. This book was created to help you enjoy that gift to the fullest. Section 1. Blueprint of a Human Soul. DNA of the Soul. A quick question for our male listeners. Do you remember the exact moment as a kid when your voice suddenly cracked and you found yourself speaking in a tone many octaves lower than the day before? Do you remember the precise moment when the clear, smooth skin on your face suddenly broke out in blemishes? You had to begin applying acne cream and washing with expensive, deep cleansing soap. We might not recall the month, day, or moment when such things occurred, but this information was already known and recorded in the DNA of our cells. It was preset in our genes at the moment we arrived in this world. This also goes for the color of our hair, the size of our waists, and our predisposition toward the various ailments that can afflict us during the course of our lives. All of our physical traits and characteristics are determined and governed by our genes. It is the information encoded in the DNA that determines the characteristics of all living things. DNA is a genetic language formed with its own alphabet. In the late 1950s, biologists cracked the code of life and discovered the genetic alphabet, which is composed of 4 letters: A, T, C, G. ATCG refers to 4 different kinds of nucleotides that translate into 20 amino acids, the building blocks of proteins. Protein molecules are what make you and me living stuff. The 4 nucleotides combine to create words and sentences that compose the genetic code of an individual. Each person has about 3 billion combination of letters in his or her genetic code. The differences among people lie in the combination and sequences of their 4 nucleotide letters. All we really are, therefore, is a set of living chemical symbols. We are all alphabetic in structure. In the same way that the physical body contains DNA, so too does the human soul. Just as cellular DNA determines the development of our physical bodies throughout our lifetime, the DNA of our souls determines our spiritual and emotional development. Even more remarkable, our spiritual DNA is also expressed through letters, as we will discover shortly. Our genetic programming is inherited from our parents. Moms and dads' various physical attributes are passed down to us, recorded in our genetic code. But how do we acquire the spiritual DNA in our souls? Where does it come from? How do we know it even exists? What role does this spiritual DNA play in our lives? Most importantly, can we alter our spiritual DNA? A Kabbalist, a geneticist. Perhaps the very first geneticist was Abraham, the patriarch, who lived about 4,000 years ago. The founder of 3 great religions, Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, Abraham also composed the Sefer Yetzirah, or Book of Formation. In this book, Abraham presented the blueprint of Kabbalistic wisdom, a metaphysical structure known as the 10 Sephirot, or 10 luminous emanations. Using this system, Abraham was able to describe the workings of our solar system and our galaxy as we know them today. Abraham also knew that there were DNA-like forces permeating all reality at every level, and that these forces, when combined in various ways, were responsible for the creation of the people on Earth, the planets that occupy our solar system, and the particles that reside in the subatomic world. According to Abraham, the spiritual DNA in our souls is transferred to each of us through a very precise and complex mechanism: the planets of our solar system. These planets are the devices whereby an individual's spiritual DNA is imprinted into the soul. The nature of the imprint is determined by the exact time of birth and the corresponding arrangement of planets and stars. These ancient teachings are the root and precursor of the science of astrology. But make no mistake, conventional pop astrology and the Kabbalistic system for studying star formation and planetary conditions are as different from each other as night and day. The folly of pop astrology. If you've heard the question once, you've heard it 1,001 times. What's your sign? And if you're like most people, you've probably had no trouble answering it. You could probably even offer up a pretty accurate description of the characteristics of your astrological sign. The fact is, almost everyone knows something about conventional astrology, because it's everywhere. It's a part of popular culture. Suppose, for example, you wanted to find out more than what's supplied to you by your newspaper's daily astrology column. All you'd have to do is step into any bookstore or library, and the shelves would be overflowing with information on conventional astrology. You could even go online to 1,000 different astrology sites. The point is, if you're looking to learn more about conventional astrology, then you won't have to go very far. It's there for the taking. Unfortunately, however, conventional astrology provides as much real insight into your destiny as a Chinese fortune cookie. In this book, we'll explore a very different and far more powerful approach. Quite simply, Kabbalah offers the oldest and wisest application of astronomy and astrology known to humankind. As practiced by Kabbalists, the probing of planets and the study of stars is a true science through which we can understand and satisfy our own deepest needs as well as those of others. Unlike conventional astrology, which insists that everything we do is determined by the heavens, the Kabbalistic study of planets and star formation tells us that we are each born at the precise instant that is best suited to our special needs so that we can exercise our free will. Kabbalah teaches that we have many possible futures, and through Kabbalistic wisdom, we can become captains of our own ship and masters of our own destiny. In the chapters that follow, you'll learn much more of what this means. We'll introduce you to a few definitions of Kabbalah and just a little history. We'll present basic Kabbalistic precepts in an understandable form, and we'll see how these basic ideas have been applied to the planets of our solar system and to the stars that lie beyond. We'll show you how to begin using the tools of Kabbalah to gain control over your life, to understand and overcome any obstacles in your path, and to increase your well-being both spiritually and materially. So, let's get started. Origins of Kabbalah. Long before the invention of the telescope, Abraham the patriarch knew that there were 10 planets in our region of space: the Sun, the Moon, Mercury, Mars, Venus, Jupiter, and Saturn, with the 3 outer planets, Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto, wholly invisible to the naked eye. In fact, the 3 outer planets would not be detected for several thousand years to come. Abraham also knew how many years it took the most distant planet, Pluto, to revolve around the Sun: 248 years, even though this planet would not be discovered for yet another 4 millennia. Abraham recorded this knowledge in his Book of Formation, which carried the seed of all subsequent astronomical knowledge and Kabbalistic wisdom. The most comprehensive work of Kabbalah is the Zohar, or Book of Splendor, written by Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai around 200 CE. Building on the Book of Formation, the Zohar encompasses extensive commentary and vast spiritual insight, as well as key ideas about planetary influences and how they affect our lives. The Book of Formation and the Zohar are the bedrock of Kabbalistic knowledge, and nothing in either book is in opposition to the findings of modern science. Both spiritual and scientific disciplines seek to uncover basic truths about the world and our place in it. Scientific disciplines such as physics, astronomy, and medicine examine the world we can see, hear, and touch. Spiritual disciplines such as meditation and astrology study the world that lies beyond the physical realm. But reality, both spiritual and scientific, turns out to be a pretty slippery thing. We all think we know what is, but the closer we look, the less clear it becomes. In the last 100 years, science has discovered that how we look at something may be more important than what we look at, and that our expectations may be the most important factor determining what we see. Kabbalah considers the spiritual and the physical worlds to be equally worthy of investigation and analysis. Kabbalah recognizes that these two worlds are not isolated from each other, and that there are necessary and solid links between them. Kabbalah identifies the link between the spiritual and the physical worlds, the upper world and the world below, as the desire to receive, and humankind is the highest embodiment of that desire. In other words, humanity is a bridge between the spiritual and the physical realms. As above, so below. Kabbalah teaches that there are 4 levels or dimensions of reality: emanation, atzilut, creation, bria, formation, yetzirah, and action, asiya. For now, it's enough to know that the first dimension, emanation, is the highest level, and the 4th dimension, action, is the lowest. But action is very important to us because we live in a material world. Cars, the moon, trees, rocks, your children, they're all here in the realm of action. Yet all 4 dimensions are formed in the same way. Everything that happens in the first dimension is repeated in the one below, and so on, from top to bottom. All 4 levels, then, contain the same essence. The only difference between the higher levels and those below is the quality of the essence. In the highest dimension, the essence is absolutely pure. As it filters down through the different levels, its purity diminishes bit by bit until it reaches our physical world. This filtering process is actually a good thing, as it prevents us from receiving more light than we can handle. This process might be compared to a rubber stamp and the image it produces. When we press the stamp onto a piece of paper, every detail engraved on the stamp is reproduced and now visible on the piece of paper. But each time we use the stamp, the image gets a little harder to see. The forms are all there, but the image is slightly less clear than before. In much the same way, each dimension represents the stamped image of the dimension just above it. Only the quality of the form is a little less distinct. All the things and happenings in one dimension are copied in the one below. Everything found in this world must have its counterpart in the worlds above. Kabbalists have a phrase to describe this process: as above, so below. Our world is the seeable, touchable, hearable, smellable, and tastable form of all the hidden spiritual worlds. There is nothing in our physical world that does not come from the worlds above. Kabbalah tells us that everything we see in this world is only a reflection, an approximation, a clue to something beyond outward appearances. Take a minute to think about this. Perhaps you should pause this book, walk outside, and take a close look at the trees, the birds, and the people passing on the street. Every one of these things is, first and foremost, a seeable reflection of a hidden spiritual essence that reaches all the way up into the highest levels of the universe. The Zohar puts it this way: "You who do not know, but who nonetheless aspire to understand, ponder over what is revealed and manifested in the world, and you will understand all that is concealed. Because everything to which the Creator has given corporeal form has been created in the image of that which is above." A very, very long time ago, science says at least 15 billion years ago, our universe exploded into existence with the Big Bang. If it weren't for the Big Bang, we wouldn't be here, nor would the planets, the stars, or anything else. The Big Bang is when time began. That's what science says, and Kabbalah agrees. Kabbalah tells us that before the Big Bang, there was an infinite force of positive energy. It had no beginning and no end. In Aramaic, the word used to describe this energy force is called or, which means light. Before the Big Bang, there was nothing but light. There was no space, there was no time, there was no motion. Kabbalah refers to the light as the first cause. There are no other causes before it. Section 2. The moment before creation. Defining light. The light is everything positive. To make this concept easier to comprehend, take a few minutes to make a list of the best moments of your life. That unbelievable catch you made in a baseball game when you were 9. The day you were able to buy your first car. The night the one you loved said they loved you too. The moment your first child was born. It doesn't have to be a long list, but all of us have had at least a few moments when we were filled with a sense of happiness and hope, and the world seemed like it was made just for us. Now, mix all these moments together, magnify them by a factor of about 15 billion, and understand that it's still not even a microscopic speck compared to the never-ending feeling of peace, fulfillment, and pleasure that is the essence of the light. The moments that made your list, the feelings of accomplishment, faith, and contentment that you experienced, are all manifestations of a portion of the light. The light is the bond that holds a marriage together, the force that heals a broken arm or a wounded heart, the power that creates faith in the future. All this and more is included within the light. If the whole nature of the light is to give, the desire to share, and all there was in the beginning was the light, what is there to give? The light wanted to share, and yet it had nothing to share with. Obviously, something had to be done. So the light created a vessel to receive everything it had to offer. Receiving was the vessel's whole job, its only job, the desire to receive. Kabbalah teaches that the light is the first cause and the vessel the first effect. According to Kabbalah, the creation of the vessel, with its desire to receive, is the only creation that ever took place. Everything else was a result of that creation. So we had the light, whose whole nature was to give of itself. We had the vessel, whose whole nature was to receive all the positive things that the light had to share. The vessel was filling up with the light, and because time and space hadn't even begun yet, the vessel was filling endlessly. The vessel kept receiving, and the light kept giving. It was perfect. It was paradise. But then a strange thing happened. The vessel inherited from its creator the traits of sharing and desiring to be the cause. This desire to share felt very good to the vessel. In fact, the vessel wanted to start doing something of its own, to shed some light of its own. It wanted to become more of a cause and less of an effect. But how could the vessel express the desire to share if its very nature was to receive? How could the vessel be the cause of its own fulfillment if it was merely the effect? Sharing, after all, wasn't part of its job. So the vessel made a decision. The vessel pushed back the light and said, "No more." The moment the vessel pushed back the light and stopped being simply an effect, the light said, "Okay, I understand your need to evolve and express yourself." Just as a loving parent who stands back to allow a toddler to take his or her first tentative steps, the light withdrew. It gave the vessel the space to learn about sharing and the opportunity to become a causative force in the process of creation. The vessel now had a space in which it could express its own sharing nature. This space was the cause of the creation of our physical realm. The ancient Kabbalists called the vessel's act of pushing back the light restriction. Science calls it the Big Bang. The Big Bang. According to Kabbalah, once the restriction took place, the vessel exploded into zillions and zillions of pieces. The pieces of the shattered vessel became all the fragments of matter and energy that make up our entire universe. Atoms, animals, people, planets, everything. In this way, the vessel could share with itself and with the light, thereby becoming the cause of its own fulfillment. Everything in the universe is a portion of the original vessel. Kabbalistically, the desire to receive is the secret engine that drives everything in the universe and is, in fact, indispensable to the world's functioning. In order to look more closely at this idea, let's review what we've learned so far. There is nothing in our physical world that does not originate in the spiritual worlds above. Before time began, all that existed was an infinite force of positive energy that Kabbalah calls the light. The light's main characteristic is its desire to share all the beneficence that it contains. In order to share, the light created the vessel. The vessel was made by the light. Its main characteristic was the desire to receive all that the light had to offer. One of the qualities the vessel received from the light was the desire to share, the desire to be the cause of its own pleasure. But the vessel couldn't share or be the cause while it was in a constant state of receiving. So the vessel pushed back the light, separating from the light for the first time. The vessel exploded into all the fragments of matter and energy that make up our universe. And since the vessel's main characteristic was the desire to receive, all the fragments that make up our universe contain aspects of this desire. Even rocks and stones have a little bit of the desire to receive. As we move up the scale of creation, we see an increasing physical dependence on the external world. A carrot needs more from the world than a rock. A cow needs more than the carrot. But human beings have by far the greatest desire to receive, because we not only need material things, such as water, air, and food, we also require intangibles, such as peace, hope, love, and fulfillment. Remember, according to the wisdom of Kabbalah, the unifying link between the spiritual and the physical worlds, the upper world and the world below, is the desire to receive the light of the Creator. And humanity is the highest embodiment of that desire. In other words, Kabbalah tells us that people are the missing link between the spiritual and physical worlds. How does that work exactly? How are we the unifying link between our world and the worlds above? To answer this question, let's revisit our list, and everywhere it says the vessel, put in the word humanity. When you're finished, the list should look something like this. There's nothing in our physical world that does not originate in the spiritual worlds above. Before time began, all that existed was an infinite force of positive energy that Kabbalah calls the light. The light's main characteristic was its desire to share all the beneficence that it contains. In order to share, the light created humanity. Humanity was made by the light. Its main characteristic was its desire to receive all that the light had to offer. One of the qualities that humanity received from the light was the desire to share and to be the cause of its own pleasure. But it couldn't share while it was in a constant state of receiving. Humanity pushed back the light. Humanity became the vessel to receive the blessings of the light. We are made up of two essential elements: our body, or our ego, the vessel whose true nature begins and ends with the desire to receive for the self alone, and our soul, which embodies the desire to receive for the sake of sharing. Desire to receive. The ultimate transformation of the human desire to receive is found in the desire to receive for the sake of sharing. Remember, this desire to share was the reason that the vessel chose to push the light away. It's when the desire to receive is transformed into the desire to receive for the sake of sharing that we are most like the light and become the cause of our own fulfillment. According to Kabbalah, we actually reunite with the light at the moment we emulate its sharing nature. In this way, we serve as the link between the physical world and the spiritual world above. By exercising our potential for sharing, we form a connection to the light that created us. And, as with any good exercise that makes us stronger, the more we share, the greater our potential becomes. From a Kabbalistic perspective, sharing is receiving. When we share, we might have the impression that we are giving something up, but in fact, we create a flow of energy from the spiritual world that replaces our loss. This does not mean that if we give someone $1, we'll find $1 in our pockets when we get home. That $1's gone. Make no mistake about it. But our capacity to receive the light increases with every act of sharing we commit. So an apparent loss at the physical level is balanced out by an increase of light on the spiritual level. The result of our sharing might be a positive effect on our health or in our relationships, or we might receive something too subtle and mysterious to notice right away. But whether we notice it or not, we can be certain that for every act of sharing, a deposit is made into our spiritual bank accounts. The only purpose of the desire to receive is to attract the infinite blessings of the light. This is the whole reason for our existence in the physical world. But what about those people who receive money, power, and happiness without even thinking about sharing? Kabbalah recognizes that we can, at any time we wish, selfishly receive the blessings of the light. Very often, our desire to receive degenerates into a self-centered desire to receive for the self alone. It forgets its true purpose and is led astray by the pleasures of this earthly existence. But physical or spiritual satisfaction will not endure unless there is a balance between receiving and sharing. For example, we might achieve success in business by exerting our desire to receive for the self alone. But there will eventually be darkness and chaos in another area of our lives, in our health, in our relationships, or in our emotional well-being. So why settle for less? We can have it all if we just learn how to receive from the light in a balanced way. Giving and receiving become a cause rather than an effect is the goal of our existence. We cannot continue to receive the light unless we share the light. If we are only receivers, we become merely reactive to the events and circumstances around us. Put another way, the more we give from the vessel, the more room we have for what we will receive in turn. Consider an 8-ounce glass. The glass can hold only 8 ounces of water, and that's it. But cut a tiny hole in the bottom of the glass and allow the water to fill other cups, and suddenly water can flow endlessly. This idea of a voluntary desire to receive for the sake of sharing is one of the most insightful truths that Kabbalah has to offer. We stress the word voluntary because the choice is at the root of Kabbalah's insight. Kabbalah recognizes that the vessel itself, and not the light, made its own choice. It exercised free will. It was no longer just a receiver. By choosing to restrict the light until it could share, the vessel went from being simply the first effect to being the first effect and cause in its own right. It became proactive, like the light itself. So the vessel was the master of its own destiny. The idea of free will is what makes Kabbalistic astrology fundamentally different from conventional pop astrology. The difference between cause and effect. What does it mean to be an effect in this physical world? What does it mean to become the cause? And how does free will fit into this dynamic? Imagine there's a sudden downturn in your business. You become upset, worried, or frightened. Suppose a friend insults you and you feel hurt, angry, and even vengeful. In both situations, an external event was the cause of your inner feelings. You merely reacted to a situation. Your feelings were the effect of something outside yourself. But what if things take a turn for the better? Business improves. You're ecstatic, brimming with confidence. Then someone you admire pays you a compliment. You're flattered and gratified. Once again, something external is the cause of your emotions. Again, you are merely reacting to a situation outside yourself. The situation was the cause, and your good feelings were the effect. In contrast, let's examine what it means to be the cause. A financial crisis strikes. You're about to panic, but you remember that your purpose in life is to become the cause, not just the effect. Instead of reacting in a panic, you let go. You focus your attention on your response. You realize that you have the power to determine your own happiness, that it is not dependent on the ups and downs of a business cycle. Then, suddenly, business is booming again. Instead of reacting with a happiness and joy at the prospect of higher profits, you acknowledge that your happiness should be present regardless of outside forces. This simple acknowledgement puts you in control of your inner life. You are the cause of your feelings. When we receive the light directly, as we did when we were first created, we are merely an effect. However, when the light is concealed, and we have to earn it by resisting our reactive instincts, the light is then revealed. We are the cause of its revelation. Imagine a kind, old puzzle maker whose greatest joy is creating the most delightful pictures for children and turning them into puzzles. The puzzle maker is responsible for creating the original picture. His goal is to bestow pleasure by creating the most enchanting pictures. But no child wants to receive a puzzle that is already fully assembled, no matter how enchanting or amazing the completed picture is. The real joy is in assembling the puzzle. When a child rebuilds the puzzle and gazes at the completed image, he or she feels a sense of ownership and accomplishment. The child becomes the cause behind the creation of the image. In assembling a puzzle, we may put pieces in the wrong places, but that challenge gives value and meaning to the right moves when we do finally make them. That's life. The light disassembled the puzzle of creation at the behest of the vessel so that we could rebuild it, spiritually speaking. And yes, we tend to make both wrong and right moves in this puzzle of life. But each time we stop reacting to external events and resist our natural self-seeking tendencies, we connect another piece of the puzzle. Each time we restrict the urge to react and instead are proactive, another piece is put in place. People often discredit astrology when two individuals, born at the exact same time in the same place, lead completely different lives. The positions of their planets are identical, right? So why don't their lives follow exactly the same paths? Kabbalah would answer this way. It's because your life is not determined by the positions of the planets. What, you may say? Run that by me again? Your life is not determined by the positions of the planets. In fact, it would be more correct to say that the positions of the planets are determined by your life, or lives. Your birth occurred at a particular moment because it was at that precise moment that your soul needed to be born. In other words, it wasn't by chance that you were born at exactly 8:43 p.m. on July 21st, 1958 in Chicago, Illinois. Chance had nothing to do with it. As Albert Einstein said, God does not play dice with the universe, and neither do our souls play games with us. Each of us was born at the precise moment that gave us the best opportunity to become more like the light and ascend to a higher level of consciousness. Put another way, we're here to get better at sharing and to become the cause of our own fulfillment. And in doing so, we reconnect to the light that made us. Kabbalah tells us that our present life is an aggregate of all our previous lives. In our previous lives, we faced problems and challenges and made certain choices. Some of these choices were good ones. They resulted in the growth of our desire to receive for the sake of sharing and the evolution of our souls. Some of those choices meant that we were not just reacting to outside forces. Instead, we resisted and became the cause of our own feelings. But some of our choices weren't so good. They resulted in the growth of our desire to receive for the self alone, and they limited the growth of our souls. We reacted to the outside influences that life threw at us. We succumbed to all the temptations that gratified our egos without any regard to the person next to us. Through the process of reincarnation, we return to an astrological location that gives us the best opportunity possible to revisit those not-so-good choices. This time, we can make different choices and overcome the limitations that held back the growth of our souls. We must play the game until we get it right. It's just like kids playing a video game. They keep playing and losing and learning and remembering until they figure out all the tricks of the game, work their way through all the levels, and they win. Except the game of life is a little harder. In the game of life, each time we play, We seem to forget that we ever played before. It always seems like the first time. Most of us can't remember how we lived those past lives, or where we failed, or what choices limited the growth of our desire to receive for the sake of sharing. So when those same choices rise up before us again in this life, how can we make better decisions? To begin to answer this question, imagine you're on a cosmic road trip. Your journey is influenced by all the other road trips you've ever taken, but you can't remember any of them. The route is littered with all kinds of detours and patches of unpaved road and places you might avoid if only you could remember what you did on your last trip. But since you can't remember, you get all turned around. You get lost and never quite reach your destination, so you feel frustrated and unfulfilled, disappointed and unhappy. Sound familiar? Wouldn't it be nice if someone could hand us a map when we start out to help us navigate our way around all the trouble spots? Well, there is such a map. The map clearly identifies the kinds of choices we've made before and suggests alternative routes for reaching the best destination we can hope to attain on this particular trip. And Kabbalah tells us it's all right there in the genetic code of our souls, otherwise known as our astrological chart. Section 3. Spiritual Evolution. Free will. Conventional astrology says that our characters are determined by the position of the planets or stars. All the decisions have already been made. It's over. We're stuck with it, and it's out of our hands. The sages of Kabbalah tell us we're born at the precise moment that gives us the best chance at being the best we can be. Kabbalah says that we're going to have choices in this life just as we have had choices in our past lives. Our past choices have determined where we start out, and our present choices will determine where we end up. The decisions are ours to make. Our fate is in our own hands. We've had free will right from the beginning of time. It was the vessel that chose to push away the light in order to realize its potential for sharing and become the cause of its own destiny. The vessel said, "No more light unless I can become a causative force." If it weren't for that first act of free will, we wouldn't be here today. No restriction, no Big Bang, no universe as we know it. Ever since, we've been making both good and bad decisions, but we've been making them ourselves. It's precisely on this issue of free will that Kabbalah differs from conventional astrology. But with free will comes responsibility. We are responsible for where we find ourselves. We are driving our own cars. That means we can't blame our mothers, our fathers, our bosses, or even the Creator for the position we may find ourselves in. Some of our choices in previous lives weren't so good as far as the growth of our souls was concerned. Some were self-serving and did nothing to improve our ability to share and become more like the light. Indeed, we might have let all kinds of external episodes and material possessions control and motivate our entire existence. We were merely the effect, tossed about like a ping-pong ball by peer pressure, jealousy, and blind ambition. In fact, those self-serving choices we made in previous lives have set up obstacles that we are now being asked to overcome in this life. These obstacles are actually good things, though, for they're what makes life interesting and challenging. What, after all, is a high hurdles race without the hurdles? But here's the most important thing. what we have built, we can tear down. Conventional astrology says, you are imprisoned by the positions of the planets and stars. Kabbalah says, if you want to call it a prison, it is a prison of your own making. Your past choices have built the walls. Your present choices can tear those walls down. One of the most powerful tools for pulling down those walls is called tikkun, which is Aramaic for correction. The Kabbalistic concept of tikkun reveals the kinds of choices we've made in past lives and, more important, which choices we should make this time around. By understanding our personal tikkun, we can identify our past weaknesses, recognize the baggage we've brought along from previous lives, avoid the roadblocks and detours that slow our progress toward the light, overcome our deepest fears, and become all that we can be in the deepest sense. Think of a big interstellar spaceship on its way to a distant star. On board is a computer that keeps the rocket on course. Along its route, the rocket passes strange planets and stars that exert gravitational pull on its hull. But the computer keeps the flight path straight and true, making corrections whenever needed. We are that rocket. The physical universe is the computer, the planets and stars the hardware, and tikkun is the software that keeps our individual lives on course. Without tikkun, the rocket is certain to be pulled off course by various influences. In other words, without taking into account our point of correction, we're doomed to be pushed and pulled through life by the positions of our stars. Our tikkun shows us the way, shows us the work we need to do on ourselves. It is up to us to make the corrections that keep the rocket on course. On an astrological chart, the tikkun is called the lunar node. Lunar, of course, refers to the moon, which is very important in Kabbalah because it represents the desire to receive. The lunar node is made up of two diametrically opposed poles, the south node and the north node. The south node describes all the baggage that we've brought along from previous lives. The north node describes the path or correction to take in our present life. Together, they are the keys to self-realization. Every good sailor knows that the position of the stars reveals where we are. More importantly, Kabbalah teaches that the stars can also show where we came from and how to get to where we're going. The reason for DNA in our souls. The DNA in our soul sets us on a course of life that will help transform our desire to receive to a desire to receive for the sake of sharing, or, put another way, to become more like the light that made us. To help accomplish this, Abraham, the patriarch, and other great Kabbalists revealed information about the influence that the stars and planets exert each month. With this basic information, we can spot various energies that work on us every moment of our lives. We can then make use of the helpful energies while protecting ourselves from the harmful ones. There are no bad signs or bad moments, only different opportunities. Understanding these opportunities makes it easier for us to make our corrections and do the work that's needed to lift our souls. Kabbalah has a special way of seeing the world that makes us the link between the upper world and the world below. Remember, humanity was created as the vessel to receive the light. But the light is powerful. If we were to receive it all at once, it would be like getting hit by a bolt of lightning. Too much power, too fast. Kabbalah tells us that the stars and planets are like filters that enable us to receive the light safely. Each astrological configuration, each month and its corresponding sign, blocks out most of the light but allows a manageable portion to reach us in the physical world. The characteristics of the portion of light that we receive are different for every month sign. That's why each month sign has its own unique strengths and weaknesses. As you've probably already guessed, the month sign when we were born has the strongest influence on our journey through life. This is because it is at the moment of birth that the soul enters the physical body. With our very first breath, we receive the seed of our whole life. But doesn't that mean our whole existence is predetermined? If the seed of our life is all there is in our first breath, why not just lie there like a fish and let whatever happen to us? Kabbalah would answer, because a seed is just a seed. It's a possible tree. It's up to us to choose from all the different possible paths presented to us by that first breath. Given the right care, the right food, the right light, the seed grows into the best tree it can be. But if we don't do the necessary work on ourselves, if we don't consciously seek to transform our desires to receive into a desire to receive for the sake of sharing, if we don't use our tikkun to keep ourselves on course, we will remain at the mercy of the planets. The position of the planets at the moment of our birth do not determine our whole life. They merely influence it. They are the seeds, not the whole tree. And that's not all. Beyond the influence of our birth sign, Kabbalah tells us that we are also influenced by the energies of the planets at every moment. So it isn't just enough to know the strengths and weaknesses of our birth signs. It is also important to understand each month's signs, strengths, and weaknesses. Understanding the characteristics and energies of each month sign allows us to plan our actions with confidence and certainty, regardless of when we were born. Kabbalah tells us that we live within a predictable cycle of influences that return every year. Once we are familiar with this cycle, we can use the positive influences for our benefit and for our protection from negative influences. This simple truth is one of Kabbalah's greatest contributions to practical human wisdom, the ability to schedule actions at their most advantageous times. A few years ago, NASA sent a probe to explore the outer planets of our solar system. In order to get the rocket to its destination, the scientists timed the launch so that the probe could use Jupiter's gravity as a slingshot towards Neptune. In other words, by understanding the physical nature of Jupiter's influence on the probe, the scientists were able to use Jupiter for their own purpose. In the same way, Kabbalah allows us to use our understanding of the spiritual influence of the planets and stars for our own spiritual purpose. By making the necessary corrections to our life path, we can give ourselves the best chance of spiritual success. Kabbalah's understanding of these spiritual influences is very precise. Every lunar month is divided into 3 periods, each with its own particular energy. According to Kabbalistic teaching, the first 10 days of a lunar month are generally positive and therefore a good time to take action. The first day of a lunar month is particularly positive, offering an opportunity to connect to the full potential of energy waiting to be manifested throughout the whole month. The middle 10 days of the month are divided into 5 positive and 5 negative days. The first 5 are positive until the full moon, which in the lunar calendar always falls on the 15th day. After the full moon, the positive energy of the month becomes very difficult to reveal. Hence the 5 negative days, whose energy continues into the final 10 or so days remaining in the month. All things being equal, for example, Kabbalah tells us that a person planning to start a new business will be better off signing the papers in the early part of the lunar month rather than at the end of the month. In this way, and in many others, Kabbalah provides a way of knowing the different possibilities and opportunities that are built into every day and every instant of time. How we use these possibilities and take advantage of opportunities is up to us. The calendar. You know what day it is, don't you? If you happen to forget for a moment, you can probably check that calendar hanging on the wall of your kitchen, or perhaps the one sitting on your desk in the office, or the one on your computer or cell phone. In fact, the calendar is so much a part of our lives that we almost don't notice it anymore. The days of the week are just there, like the air that we breathe. But unlike the air, calendars are created by people to divide time into usable fragments. Without calendars, the days, months, and years would blend together into an undifferentiated, monotonous mess. We'd be looking for the Sunday paper on Tuesday. In fact, so profound is this influence on our lives that the various calendar systems separate the cultures that use them as distinctly as they separate days, weeks, and months. The Western world's Gregorian calendar is based on the Earth's orbit around the Sun. It is composed of approximately 365 days in a regular year and 366 days in each leap year, every 4th year. With the solar calendar, the separate the cultures that use them as distinctly as they separate days, weeks, and months. The Western world's Gregorian calendar is based on the Earth's orbit around the Sun. It is composed of approximately 365 days in a regular year and 366 days in each leap year, every 4th year. With the solar calendar, the position of the Sun in conjunction with the seasons is always the same. March 21st is always the beginning of the northern spring. If you live in the United States, this is probably the calendar that is attached to your refrigerator. Another system, the Muslim calendar, is based on the orbit of the moon around the Earth. It is made up of 12 months of 29 or 30 days each. The Muslim lunar year, or the passing of 12 new moons, comes to approximately 354 days, which makes the Muslim year about 11 days shorter than the solar or Gregorian year. Because of this difference between the lunar and solar years, any given month in the Muslim calendar may fall during any of the solar seasons. As a result, Muslim holidays don't necessarily occur during the same season. The Kabbalistic calendar is based on the lunar year of 12 months with 29 or 30 days each, with each month corresponding to one of the 12 signs of the zodiac. But because all cosmic holidays and festivals, such as Rosh Hashanah and Passover, occur on days mandated by the Bible according to the lunar month within a particular season of the solar year, the lunar year must be reconciled with the solar year to prevent holidays from wandering through the seasons as in the Muslim calendar. To accomplish this goal, 7 times in every 19 years, the Kabbalistic calendar has a leap year with an additional 13th month, Adar II, a second month of Pisces. This maintains an approximate correspondence between the Kabbalistic lunar calendar and the Gregorian solar calendar. At the same time, a person's birth sign may be different on the Kabbalistic calendar than it is on the Gregorian calendar. If you would like to know your lunar birth date and discover if your lunar astrological sign differs from your conventional sign, please visit astrology.kabbalah.com. Aramaic signs in the heavens. According to Kabbalah, the 22 Aramaic letters are the building blocks of the entire universe, with each letter revealing an aspect of creation. The Aramaic letters are the genetic alphabet of the entire universe. This is not just a metaphor. Although it is beyond the scope of this book, Kabbalah teaches that the letters of the Aramaic alphabet are the actual stuff of which the universe is made. Each letter has a very specific and powerful spiritual energy. 12 letters are the actual DNA code for the 12 signs of the zodiac. He is the DNA code that created Aries. Vav is the DNA code that created Taurus. Zayin is the DNA code that created Gemini. Het is the DNA code that created Cancer. Tet is the DNA code that created Leo. Yud is the DNA code that created Virgo. Lamed is the DNA code that created Libra. Nun is the DNA code that created Scorpio. Samach is the DNA code that created Sagittarius. Ain is the DNA code that created Capricorn. Tzadi is the DNA code that created Aquarius. Kuf is the DNA code that created Pisces. The remaining 7 letters are the DNA forces that created the Sun, the Moon, and the first 5 planets. Chaf created the Sun. Taf created the Moon. Resh created Mercury. Pe created Venus. Dalet created Mars. Gimel created Jupiter. Bet created Saturn. From this, we see that there are 2 Aramaic letters associated with every month. One letter for the heavenly body that rules the month, and another letter for the corresponding sign of the zodiac. These 2 letters enable us to connect to the inner spiritual energy of each month. The letters are the keys or the passwords that give us access to a particular month's source of spiritual energy. Using the Aramaic letters helps us reunite the upper world, the spiritual world, with the physical world below. Section 4. Cracking the Code of the Soul. The Torah speaks in detail about the 12 tribes of Israel and goes to great lengths to define the positions of the 12 tribes and their encampments in the desert. 3 tribes on the east side, 3 tribes on the south, and so on. According to Kabbalah, these passages metaphorically refer to the 12 constellations and their positions in the heaven. And these 12 signs give us insights into our spiritual genetic makeup. This section discusses each sign and constellation in the night sky and its corresponding lunar month. We provide a description of the month's sign's spiritual DNA and the characteristics and energies associated with it. And we suggest ways to express the strengths and control the weaknesses inherent in them. These descriptions don't pretend to be exhaustive or complete. They are merely introductions to a much larger body of knowledge, which we hope will encourage you to dig deeper. If you look carefully at the characteristics of any of the signs, you'll notice that each characteristic is a sort of double-edged sword. For example, single-mindedness by itself can be a very positive feature, expressing itself as consistency, stability, or persistence in the face of hardship. But a single-mindedness can quickly become childish stubbornness. In the same way, an intolerance of opposition at the service of a good cause is a positive quality. But when selfishly applied, it soon becomes narrow-mindedness and fanaticism. It is not the sword itself, but how you choose to wield the sword that counts. Kabbalah recognizes that the influence of your birth month sign can take you in many directions, and it is up to you to choose the path. The goal of Kabbalah is to help lift the level of your soul, to transform your desire to receive to a desire to receive for the sake of sharing, to become more like the light that made you. If the following descriptions seem to sound negative to you, remember that obstacles provide us with the opportunity to choose differently this time around. It's only when we face these challenges that we can overcome our fears and move forward toward the light. Listen to all the month signs, not just your birth month. Each month is pertinent because we all have to find our way through the entire year. Each month suggests its own possibilities and opportunities for improving our lives. To determine the sign which represents your tikkun, point of correction, please refer to the attached tikkun reference table. The month of Nisan, Aries. Rebels without a cause. Nisan is the first month of the lunar year. It always coincides with the northern spring, around late March on the Gregorian calendar. Ruled by the planet Mars and named after the Roman god of war, it is a month filled with opportunities in the form of confrontations, battles, and potential antagonism. Because of this, Kabbalah tells us that the force of miracles is present in the universe during the month of Nisan. The Aramaic letters connecting us to the positive aspects of the month are He, which created the sign of Aries and represents the desire to receive, and Dalet, which created Mars and means pour. The combination of these two letters is interpreted to mean that during the month of Nisan, we should strive to diminish our desire to receive for the self alone. By contemplating these two Aramaic letters, we can tap into the energy necessary to attain this goal. The strengths and weaknesses of those born under the influence of Aries are linked with the ideas of seeds, infancy, or immaturity. A unique potential for growth coupled with a tendency towards impulsiveness and stubbornness, a pioneering spirit, boundless enthusiasm, courage, and a love of freedom combined with a total disregard for the consequences of one's actions. Like very young children, Aries tend to think of themselves as the center of the universe. And when they want something, they want it now. According to the Book of Formation, Sefer Yetzirah, each sign of the zodiac corresponds to a different part of the body. Aries is associated with the head. Like the ram that represents this sign, Aries rushes into things head first. If Aries is suddenly taken with an idea at 4 o'clock in the morning, they take action immediately. If someone should question their decisions, they become indignant. When Aries believes in something, they dismiss all objections. They cannot tolerate opposition. Under the influence of Mars, the planet of war, Aries are courageous and even daring. Unafraid of confrontation, they have a tendency to seek it out. Again, like the ram, Aries have a need to break down all barriers that stand in their way. They hate confinement or limitation of any kind. Danger has no meaning to them. They are quick and direct, but can be burdened by inflexibility and a lack of diplomacy. As a fire sign, their tempers tend to flare easily. If this sounds a lot like some teenagers you know, it isn't by accident. In many ways, Aries are rebels without a cause. If you look carefully at the characteristics of Aries, their double-edged sword is, in fact, exactly what was described in the previous chapter. Single-mindedness, expressing itself on the one hand as consistency, stability, or persistence in the face of hardship, and on the other hand as childlike stubbornness. So for Aries in particular, this means their tikkun is all about putting themselves at the service of a cause that goes beyond desire to receive for the self alone. It means transforming the love of freedom for its own sake to the love of a higher freedom that liberates them from the grip of selfish impulses. True freedom is not about a petulant, I can do anything I want. It's about mastering the ego. Impetuous action does not necessarily make an Aries free. On the contrary, it may enslave them to momentary impulse and empty whim. Aries need to put themselves at the service of a cause that goes beyond the desire to receive for the self alone. It means transforming love of freedom for its own sake into love of a higher freedom that liberates from the grip of selfish impulses. In fact, because Aries' desire to receive is so strong, they have the greatest potential for transforming their desire to receive into a desire to receive for the sake of sharing. The seed, the potential for transformation, is within them in abundance. In other words, by working to correct the self-centered influences of the month sign, Aries can become positive, proactive channels for the light and increase their ability to receive for the benefit of others. Along this redemptive path, and for the same selfless reasons, they can learn to listen carefully before passing judgment and reflect before taking action. In this way, they can reverse the negative reactive influences of the sign. This is the battle that Aries were made to fight. In this way, they become rebels with a cause. The word Nisan contains the Aramaic word nes, which means miracle. According to Webster, a miracle is an accomplishment or occurrence so outstanding or unusual as to seem beyond human capability or endeavor. Let's look at what this means for taking advantage of the positive energy that the month has to offer. The parting of the Red Sea was a miracle. David slaying Goliath was a miracle. Both seemed impossible, beyond human capability. But Kabbalah tells us that miracles happen every second because the light gives us an opportunity to change our destiny at every point in time. David was not fighting for himself, but for his people. He was placing himself at the service of an unselfish interest. This was the hard part. This was the miracle. He had already overcome the self-centered aspect of his personality. He had beaten the spiritual giant inside himself before the physical battle ever began. After this, bringing down Goliath was easy. Specifically, the month of Nisan allows us to connect to a miraculous energy that helps us overcome and diminish our desire to receive for the self alone. If your tikkun correction is in Aries, a tikkun in Aries tells you that you formerly had the behavior of a Libra, South Node. That is, you were often in the role of arbitrator, but were unable to settle conflicts because you refused to make decisions. Taking sides was difficult for you, since it implied possibly hurting someone. Because of this, rather than make a clear choice, you tried to unite what was incompatible, and you suffered the consequences of your indecision. As a Libran, you learned to compromise in order to avoid confrontation. You were overly dependent on the opinion of others, and this often caused you to act aggressively soon after your initial act of submission. Classic passive-aggressive behavior. A tikkun in Aries points you toward a correction where you must, above all else, uncover your identity, your unique needs, and your individual desires. You must seek independence and reinforce your self-confidence. This will help you discover your own spiritual nature and enable you to become more proactive in all areas of your life. Along this path of correction, you can stop avoiding confrontations and face each situation as it unfolds, without needing the approval of others. As you pass each test, you will gain awareness and confidence, come to know your own personality, and strengthen yourself. Combining Libra's altruism with Aries' ability to fight the good fight will bring about an overall elevation of your soul, allowing you to become the cause of the fulfillment you will soon receive. And this is what Kabbalah is all about. This month's influence on all of us. Confrontation. Aries is ruled by the war planet Mars. War can signify conflict among nations or hostility between two individuals. The spiritual influences arising in this month offer you the emotional strength to triumph over personal conflict and effect reconciliation. Nisan is an opportune time to build bridges and make peace with people with whom you're in conflict. The month of Iyar, Taurus. Bull in the bubble. Iyar is the second month of the lunar year and usually occurs in April or May on the Gregorian calendar. Ruled by the planet Venus, the Roman goddess of love and beauty, Iyar is nicknamed the month of light. The Aramaic letters connecting us to Iyar's positive aspects are Vav, which created the sign of Taurus, and Pe, which created the planet Venus. Taken together, these letters tell us that during the month of Iyar, the force of judgment is present in the universe. How are light and judgment related? How can we best take advantage of the possibilities this month offers? As a first step toward understanding the strengths and weaknesses of those born under the influence of Taurus, imagine a bull grazing contentedly in his own little meadow in a sun-drenched valley surrounded by hills. As far as he's concerned, his beautiful little meadow goes on forever. He can't see any fences from where he stands, and he just assumes that there aren't any fences anywhere. Life seems okay where he is, and he imagines it's okay everywhere. Besides, why go looking for trouble? Don't make waves. That's his motto. Live and let live. Things always work out in the end. So he minds his own business and keeps on grazing, satisfied with the cards he has been dealt. He's loyal, consistent, patient, tolerant, law-abiding, friendly, dependable, non-judgmental, and heck, He's pretty good looking to boot. What more could he ask of himself? Good question. What more could he ask of himself? For most of us, the world is such a patchwork of good and bad, success and failure, darkness and light, beauty and ugliness. And when we see personalities like the bulls, we are tempted to leave them alone in their comfortable, Pollyannish bliss. This is precisely what most Taurians would prefer. They don't want to be changed. They don't want to be bothered. They don't even want to move. And it's easy to see why. The light is very warm on their backs. The world Taurians live in is bathed in light. Venus, Noga in Aramaic, rules Taurus. Noga means light. For Taurians, light is everywhere. A beautiful, dazzling, but sometimes blinding light. Because of this, Taurians tend to be eternal optimists, focusing on the positive and disregarding the negative. Nothing seems to upset them. They refuse to attribute bad intentions to anyone. Confronted with a nasty situation, it is not unusual for Taurians to respond with indifference. The situation will right itself. The light will take care of it. For this reason, Taurians often seem to lack ambition, initiative, and imagination. But it's not that they don't possess these attributes. They just don't see any reason to use them. Because of the abundance of light in their lives, Taurians can get complacent, self-satisfied, or smug. They're comfortable exactly where they are. Taurians often look imposing and are usually burly with a wide neck. The organs that correspond to Taurus are the throat and the tonsils, making them prone to sore throats, tonsillitis, or other illnesses specific to this area of the body. Taurians' physical heaviness is generally reflected in their personalities as well. They are docile, placid, and quite stubborn. Their reactions are always measured. They do not panic easily, and they rarely lose their temper. Even their joy is expressed in a restrained manner. Taurians love comfort. Their houses, spouses, and possessions are all precious to them. Acquiring and keeping these things is one of the ways they express their power. To keep it all intact, they may excuse or ignore any snub, insult, or unpleasantness. Some Taurians will fiddle while Rome burns, and overlook even the most incontrovertible evidence of impending disaster. They place themselves in a protective bubble of comfort and light, untouched and unmoved by the negative aspects of the world. In Kabbalistic terms, Taurians may use the light to deliberately stay in the dark. They are like children hiding under a security blanket where they feel safe, warm, and cozy. When this happens, Taurus's tranquil and unfettered life can be more accurately described as stagnant and cut off from the world. Life in the bubble is safe and comfortable, but it's unconscious in every sense of the word, asleep, unaware, on autopilot. Fortunately, there is another aspect to this comfortable light of Venus. Taurians, in particular, can use this aspect to remain conscious, in touch with the world, vigorous and full of life. That aspect is judgment. Judgment is the key. Remember, each astrological configuration, each month of the year, each sign of the zodiac blocks out most of the light, but allows a safe portion of it to get through to us here in the physical world. The characteristics of the portion of the light that we receive are different for every month sign. What characteristics does the light of Venus allow through? Venus is the only one of the inner planets that rotates in a clockwise direction. According to Kabbalah, any visible expression in the physical world is the result of a spiritual energy in the hidden worlds above us. So, the unusual movement of Venus results from a different sort of spiritual energy than all the other planets. Specifically, Venus moves from left to right because it moves from a spiritual energy of judgment toward a spiritual energy of mercy. Judgment is the light's request for revelation. In other words, Iyar, the month of light, is an opportunity to discover, through the use of our judgment, something that was previously unknown to us. For Tyrians in particular, this means that there are choices, judgments, to be made. Although their perception that things always work out in the end is true, Tyrians must learn that this merciful truth is not revealed fully in our physical world. Mankind must work hard to draw aside the many curtains of darkness and let the light shine through. To grow, the bull must leave his bubble and become more proactive, make judgments, and choose good from bad. The very same light that warms his back gives him the tools to confront the world, not hide from it, and to become more involved in the world, not less. Any of us can simply accept the blessings of the light and receive for the self alone. But along this path, we become complacent, protective, insular, reactive, self-satisfied, and ultimately filled with fear of any change. Or, alternatively, we can take advantage of the force of judgment present during this month sign, engage with the world, and discover what was previously unknown to us. We can transform our desire to receive for the self alone to a desire to receive for the sake of sharing. We can emerge from our bubble and see the world for what it is, make judgments, take action, and be sensitive to others. We can engage the world and all its problems, even if it means losing some of our own peace and tranquility. Tyrians can risk change without fear. If your tikkun, correction, is in Taurus, this is one of the most difficult corrections to make. Those who have their tikkun in Taurus were Scorpios in a previous incarnation. Scorpio is the sign of self-destruction. In this lifetime, it is likely that the hurdle of a self-destructive nature remains to be overcome. At some point in this life or a past life, you are probably the victim of some deliberate injustice. You may have been robbed or driven out of your house. As a result, you carry feelings of anger and distrust. You may go to extraordinary lengths to hold on to your possessions when you sense, accurately or not, that someone is about to take them from you. You would rather destroy your own belongings than have them fall into others' hands. This applies to relationships as well as material possessions. Fear of repeating your past life may hamper your growth in this one. Despite this self-destructive tendency, your social behavior is friendly and spontaneous. Though still a rebel at heart, in this lifetime, you are constrained by your own anxiety. Your supernatural powers have not always been used in a positive way, but this time these gifts will help you reach elevated success of consciousness, as long as they are used in the service of others and towards more constructive goals. The tikkun in Taurus also reveals an individual whose attitude towards sex is relatively unbalanced. You're passionate with a large sexual appetite that has caused many upheavals in your life, traces of which are still to be found in your present life. To avoid revisiting the situations you experienced as a Scorpio, you must overcome your residual fears, distrust, and anger. To achieve this goal, your tikkun directs you towards the positive aspects of Taurus's light, to appreciate the beauty and pleasures of this life, and in so doing, banish fear, distrust, and anger. This new approach to the world will let you express yourself without the anxiety induced by fear of losing your possessions. Taurus's light is a blessing that will open you to the wonders of this world. Letting in the light of Taurus pushes out the Scorpio darkness. If you succeed in breaking out of this Scorpio envelope, you can transform your need for immediate gratification into a true gift for generosity, which will lead you to come near to a total correction, divine love. This will enable you to transform your reactive belligerence into proactive serenity. By enjoying life, you can renew it and reclaim it. Your former torments will be appeased by your newfound peace. This month's influence on all of us. Fulfillment. Often, we relinquish control of our lives to doctors, lawyers, and other experts, expecting them to heal our physical, financial, and emotional wounds. However, true healing and fulfillment is our own responsibility. This spiritual truth is made more evident this month as the effulgent light radiating in ER inspires us to seek healing and fulfillment from within. The month of Sivan, Gemini, searching for the there. Sivan is the third month of the lunar calendar, ruled by the planet Mercury, which is named after the Roman messenger of the gods. In Aramaic, Mercury is called Kochav, which is associated both with communication in the physical world and with integration of the physical and spiritual dimensions. The Aramaic letters that connect us to the spiritual energy of the month are Resh, which created the planet Mercury, and Zain, which created the sign of Gemini, or the twins. Together, they tell us that Sivan is a month filled with potential for unification, particularly for the fusion of the physical and spiritual worlds. Quick is the word that comes up most often when thinking about Gemini. Quick to judge, quick to react, and quick to change. Quick as in clever and lively, but also quick as in momentary, superficial, and passing. In this little word, all the strengths and weaknesses of the month sign begin to emerge. Geminis are worthy representatives of Mercury, the fastest planet in the solar system, which makes its trip around the Sun in a mere 88 days. That's 104,000 miles per hour, almost twice as fast as the Earth. Like the planet that rules them, Geminis are speedballs. While most people require time to absorb information before taking action, Geminis seem to gather information and react to it simultaneously. If they see it, they get it, and they're on the move. They have a remarkable ability to grasp all sides of a question, synthesize viewpoints, and come to a decision almost at once. In this, they take advantage of the inherent duality of the sign. They see things with more than one set of eyes, sometimes even seeming to be in two places at once. It's not easy to have the last word with Geminis, because they have an answer for everything and possess extraordinary powers of persuasion. They hold their own opinions in very high regard, unless, of course, they happen to change their minds. Geminis can contradict themselves in a fraction of a second, not because they were seduced by an interesting argument, but because a new perspective is sufficiently attractive for them to want to take credit for it. Though not materialistic in the ordinary sense of the word, they are what might be called intellectually materialistic. Ideas are Gemini's coins, and they like to collect, count, rearrange, and spend them. They also could be called intellectual opportunists. If an idea works, they use it. If not, they toss it aside. Geminis are extraordinary communicators, quickly getting to the heart of even the most complex issues. Yet their own hearts present them with their greatest challenges. Because they move so quickly, Geminis may have difficulty staying still long enough for anything to really touch them. They are not models of perseverance. They may start a new job or new relationship with great enthusiasm, only to leave it after a short period of time. By not persevering, Geminis deprive themselves of any meaningful enjoyment. They may waste energy concealing their ignorance rather than applying it to master a subject. They may use their mental agility to escape emotional discomfort. They may skim the surface of an idea or relationship and miss its real significance. The Book of Formation reveals that the organs of the body that relate to Geminis are the lungs and the nervous system. When a Gemini becomes disconnected from the big picture by being too quick to judge, they weaken their link with the upper world, and this can make them prone to bouts of pneumonia and bronchitis. So Geminis are curious, creative, friendly, multi-talented, intelligent, and open. But they can also be flighty, fickle, impatient, restless, anxious, snappish, sarcastic, gossipy, and cynical. Are they simply fast-talking, charmingly persuasive, and quick-witted entertainers? Or is there something more to them, perhaps even much more? In Kabbalistic astrology, the strengths and weaknesses of a month sign are cut from the same cloth. We refer to this idea as a double-edged sword that could cut in two very distinct and opposite ways. At their worst, Geminis are like quicksilver, hard to catch, hard to pin down. If you've ever broken a thermometer, you know what we're talking about. Like quicksilver, Geminis tend to fluctuate wildly depending on the temperature around them, molding themselves to any situation without a form or identity of their own. Geminis try to find themselves by adapting, like a chameleon, to whatever colors surround them, hoping to blend in. But their real identity can't be found outside themselves. Satisfaction comes only from a deeper approach to ideas, to relationships, to themselves, to life. Fortunately, they are not without the tools to accomplish this. The opportunity is there for the taking. Mercury, the ruler of Gemini and the month of Sivan, is the planet nearest to the Sun, our source of light and energy. In Kabbalistic astrology, physical proximity indicates a spiritual resemblance. As the closest planet to the Sun, Mercury has the greatest spiritual similarity to that star. As you might expect, the Sun represents a spiritual dimension above the physical world that we inhabit, a world connected more directly to the light that made us. Mercury shares this potential connection with the light, and if the planet shares it, so does the month sign. How can we take advantage of this affinity? Geminis can be very positive channels for the light if they use their gifts for communication in a sharing way. They have the ability to absorb, analyze, and transmit vast amounts of information and to communicate at many levels. But they must learn to linger a little longer over things if they want to get to the truth. To get there, they must understand that our own minds are not the source of our gifts. The light is the source. Our abilities and gifts are the blessings of the light. To maximize these blessings, Geminis must use them in a sharing way. They must go beyond a transitory intellectual self-stimulation. They must allow ideas and people to touch them and resist the urge to flee at the slightest twinge of emotional or intellectual discomfort. To connect with the world, they must penetrate beneath appearances. In this way, they will become true messengers of the light, creating links between ideas, between themselves and others, and ultimately, between this world and the upper world. If your tikkun, correction, is in Gemini, if you have a tikkun in Gemini, you formally had the characteristics of a Sagittarius. This means that you behaved like a disorganized and spoiled child, living from hand to mouth, guided mainly by selfish desires. As a Sagittarius, you cared little for the people around you or what they thought. Married, you behaved as though you were single. The satisfaction of your own immediate needs dominated your whole life. Your thirst for knowledge and study led you to discover new horizons, but in the end, you remained a prisoner of your own desires. You lived an active life and did whatever you wanted to, but you could not commit yourself to any cause that was not directly concerned with your own immediate interests. Serving others and taking their needs into consideration seemed to restrict you. Hungry for freedom, ignoring social constraints, you eagerly sought justice, but for yourself alone. You neither cooperated with your fellow human beings nor gave them much credit. But sharing does not restrain your freedom. It enhances it. By opening yourself up to the needs of others in this life, you will overcome the leftover self-absorption that has hindered your spiritual transformation. By communicating openly, you can experience deeper fulfillment than you were able to find in the limited immediate pleasures that you settled for in your previous life, and receive the benefit that the light wants to share with all of us. To do this, you must learn to conduct yourself with humility and become more respectful towards those around you. Following this path will lead to a transformation of your abilities. Your curiosity will give you access to the surrounding world, but this time through the sharing of knowledge. By doing this, you will find new and more profound meaning in your working life and in your most intimate relationships. You will understand that a true and lasting freedom is forged from your connections to others and from an exchange of ideas that lead to a true metamorphosis. This month's influence on all of us. Relationships. For the rest of us, the potential of the month is clear. In life, we always want the most in the least amount of time. But the month of Sivan gives us the unique opportunity to go beyond the surface of the physical world and reveal the deeper spiritual meaning hidden within. For all of us, this is a month to focus on developing relationships with others and with the spiritual elements of ourselves. This is a time to form lasting unions, such as marriages, and is particularly suited to thoughtful reflection on ways to integrate the twins of the physical and spiritual worlds that live in all of us. The month of Tammuz, Cancer, ever-changing moon. Tammuz is the only month sign ruled by the moon, which in Kabbalah represents the feminine principle in the universe. The moon is also associated with Malchut, the physical world of manifestation and finality, doubt and limitation. The symbol of the sign is the crab. The Aramaic letters that connect us to the spiritual energy of the month are Tav, which created the moon, and Chet, which created the sign of Cancer. Tav is the last letter of the Aramaic alphabet and generally indicates endings, limitations, and borders. Chet is a very interesting letter because it's made by combining the Zayin of Gemini with the Vav of Taurus. Taken together, the letters tell us that we can overcome the negative influences of this month by combining the positive aspects of the two previous months. The Zohar teaches us that the three most negative months of the year are Tammuz, Cancer, Av, Leo, and Tevet, Capricorn. In Kabbalistic astrology, the term negative refers to judgment. During these months, we find that judgment is more direct. There is less mercy in the universe, less time between cause and effect, and less time between actions and their consequences. Cancer, or Sartan in Aramaic, is one of the only two signs that receive the full influence of the heavenly bodies ruling them. The remaining 10 signs are governed by 5 planets. Each sign shares the energy of its ruling planet with one other sign. For example, Venus influences both Taurus and Libra. Mercury influences both Gemini and Virgo. Cancer, however, is the only sign ruled by the moon, and because of this, the moon's energy is purely and completely manifested in Cancer. The moon's influence is magnified even further because Cancer is a water sign, and we all know how the pull of gravity is responsible for the ocean's tides. To understand the sign of Cancer, then, we begin by considering the moon, the symbol of variability and our planet's closest neighbor. Each and every night, the moon shows us a different face. With such a changeable ruling planet, Cancer's feelings of instability, uncertainty, and insecurity should come as no surprise. Nor should we be surprised at Cancer's attempts to regain security and stability by seeking reassurance in material comforts. Cancers are like the children of unpredictable and inconsistent parents. Such children compensate for their lack of security by becoming cautious, apprehensive, and acquisitive. Like their symbol, the crab, Cancers may create a protective shell of material things to shield them from what seems to be a capricious and uncertain world. Cancers often have round faces. The weak point of their body is their fragile stomach. They have difficult digestive systems and may be susceptible to ulcers. Cancers also have a tendency to suffer emotionally. They are prone to depression and severe mood swings, from joy to sadness to anger, and back again within seconds. On the positive side, this hypersensitivity allows them to understand quickly what others need or want. Cancers are keen observers of every movement or gesture, tirelessly looking for hints of change or trouble. They are extremely intuitive. But they are also extremely vulnerable. Because of this, They are constantly torn between their understanding of others' needs and their own need to protect themselves. Therefore, they may retreat into a shell, hiding behind a mask of seeming indifference. Fear of hurt may immobilize them and prevent them from taking any action that could benefit someone else or themselves. Kabbalah associates the moon with Malchut, the physical world we see, hear, taste, smell, and touch. But in the physical world, we are limited by physical laws. We are limited by time. We are limited by our own bodies. Death is present in the physical world. Since there is no apparent way around these endings and limitations, we develop strategies for working within the finite system. Cancers, however, being under the influence of the moon, often feel that they cannot deal with the limitations that the physical world presents. Unlike Taurians, Cancers feel that they have no comforting light to escape into. For Cancers, the finite and apparently predetermined aspects of the physical world are a constant worrisome companion. They find themselves looking for the negativity that lurks everywhere, and it's no surprise that they usually find it. For Cancers, things are always about to come to an end. They may become reluctant to take risks. They may fear being misjudged and constantly seek reassurance and recognition. Taken to extremes, this anxiety can paralyze them. The future terrifies them. The past, on the other hand, is reassuring, and they recall it with great delight. They may even seek refuge in the past, stubbornly refusing to abandon its cocoon-like security. But remember, limitations, finality, endings, restrictions, doubt, and death are all illusions. Kabbalah tells us that the physical world is the seeable, hearable, smellable, touchable, and tastable form of the hidden spiritual worlds. Malchut, the physical world, represents the physical dimension where there are endings, doubt, and death. If Cancers are full of anguish and fear, it is only to the extent that they invest their energy in the illusion of Malchut. Kabbalah tells us that our five senses perceive no more than 5% of reality. When we base our understanding and judgments solely on this 5%, it should come as no surprise that we are filled with hesitation and doubt. By excluding 95% of reality from our awareness, we miss the underlying spiritual truth of all creation. What are the positive aspects of Cancer? Here's what the Aramaic letters tell us. Chet is constructed of Vav and Zayin. Vav is a force of healing that connects us to the upper worlds. It represents sharing, unity, love, and balance. Zayin is a sword with the power to elevate reality to a higher and purer level. The month of Tammuz gives us the opportunity to regain our balance, unify our lives, heal ourselves, and overcome the apparent limitations of the physical world through the use of sharing and love. By doing so, we are able to see beyond the physical world to the upper worlds. For Cancers in particular, this means taking a more long-term view. You must emerge from your armor of material possessions and your masks of indifference and expose yourself to risk. To do this, you must recognize that the light of the moon may be uncertain and changeable, but the light we are made of is everlasting. You must release your talents for empathy and intuitive understanding into the world. Share it with others, not for the sake of recognition, but for its own sake. Nothing will help you more to overcome your inclination toward depression and anxiety than sharing with others and putting into practice your enormous potential for generosity. By doing this, you will begin to look beyond Malchut and forge a genuine connection to the spiritual world. Remember, the only riches truly capable of satisfying us are not material. Love, health, security, and even power are humankind's deepest aspirations, and these are all metaphysical concepts, not material objects. If your tikkun, correction, is in Cancer, the person with a tikkun in Cancer carries an enormous amount of pride left over from a previous incarnation as a Capricorn. As a Capricorn, you were totally obsessed with professional victory, honor, and respectability. Bolstering your own reputation was the main motivation of your life. You undertook impossible tasks, if only to gain the admiration of others. You appointed yourself judge and jury, and, as a consequence, condemned the mistakes committed by others. Though you saw yourself as a guardian of the moral order, you neglected morality's most important attribute, mercy. As a result, you have not forged many friendships and have often been considered a shameless opportunist. This drive to achieve overwhelmed you with excessive responsibilities that prevented you from thinking of others. Consumed by social missions, you were, oddly enough, oblivious to other people. You lived cut off from the real pleasures of life, home, family, friendship, and lived a secluded, selfish existence in your own secret universe. From this previous incarnation, you have the seriousness and discipline to accomplish whatever goals you set for yourself in this life. But the tikkun in Cancer suggests that you relinquish the notion that professional victories, social importance, and your own reputation are the keys to your happiness. Kabbalistic wisdom tells us that these are all illusions. Your correction in Cancer points you toward a new goal. It suggests that real happiness, durable, satisfying happiness, can be found in the creation of a truly warm and loving home. Along this path, you will discover a world heretofore unknown to you is filled with the wonder, simplicity, and spontaneity of childhood. You will learn flexibility and generosity in relationships and parenthood. The most difficult renunciation of your past life will lie in your abandonment of the well-established Capricorn ideas of success and failure. The key to your real success will be found in the loving eyes of your family and in your dedication and devotion to that love. It is here that you will find the ultimate satisfaction. This month's influence on all of us: healing. The physical and spiritual disease of Cancer is born in Tammuz, hence the name Cancer. Cancer can occur in business, relationships, and the physical body. The Zohar, however, explains that before a disease is created, the antidote and cure originate first. This month is our antidote and proactive healing process. We should direct our consciousness toward healing throughout this period. Strive more to ensure that all your actions and deeds embody care and tolerance for others. Maintain your connection to the light to ensure health and well-being in all areas of your life. The month of Av, Leo. Breaking the pride of lions. Av is the 5th month on the lunar calendar, and it is the only month sign ruled by the sun, which in Kabbalah represents the masculine aspect in the universe. Av means father. Its symbol is the lion, one of the 4 holy entities, the other 3 being the bull, Taurus, the eagle, and mankind. The Zohar explains that energy descends from the upper worlds into our world through these 4 entities. The Aramaic letters that connect us to the spiritual energy of the month are Kaf, which created the sun, and Tet, which created the sign of Leo. Kaf represents the crown, royalty, balance, and completeness.